Yes, I know how late this video is, but I couldn't start working on it until after I finished the Mario Wonder video. In the future, I wholly intend on getting these out before the end of the year.
So that was a fucking lie.
You might not have known this, but Mr. Balls is actually a psychological torture experiment created by the Nazis during World War II. Every aspect of the game oozes with a diabolical sense of dread and foreboding. Who we think is our titular character, Mr. Balls, is actually just one of many, a simple, expendable face in the crowd whose actions are not even his own, but instead the actions of a higher, unseen force. He's forced up into this small, confined tube again and again, his blank smile simply a facade, for in truth he is trapped. And behind him, the cold metallic walls of some unknown factory, revealing that Mr. Balls is fully replaceable, a replica created by the machine. Before starting the game, you're given the selection of puzzle arrangements for Mr. Balls to start in, but no matter what you pick, the result is always the same. An illusion of free choice to keep you placated, to feel like you have some semblance of control. And all the while you play, you are slowly driven mad by a sporadic, shifting tune. Just when you think you've beaten the system, when you think you're finally free of Mr. Ball's cruel punishment, the game simply starts over, again and again, an endless cycle of misery and torment. I love Jedi Academy. Multiplayer. I would spend countless hours as a kid just running around in free-for-all, getting into these crazy lightsaber duels with NPCs, trying to recreate scenes from the movies in Duel, and playing with only blasters and Capture the Flag. I have a really fond memory of playing this game online one time. I was pretty much getting my ass kicked by a bunch of people who were way better at the game than me, but then some random guy came up to me and was like, "Hey kid, I can teach you how to fight," and then he led me to a training room where he taught me better fighting techniques while I practiced them on a dummy. But even crazier than that, he also told me about this super secret grappling hook move, which you could use to get to out-of-bounds places on the map where you could find the really good players dueling each other. And this totally blew my mind as a kid. It was like I just uncovered some super secret organization of elite master gamers, and now I could duel with them. But for how much I enjoyed Jedi Academy's multiplayer, I weirdly hadn't played much of the single player. I remember making it to the part in the game where you get a new lightsaber, but for whatever reason, I stopped shortly after that point. I figured that I should probably play through the entire game at some point considering how much I've played the multiplayer, so this year I finally decided to go back and finish what I started. And at first, it was pretty fun. You're given the ultimate power fantasy of being a Jedi, and the game's combat, while simple, is very satisfying. You can deflect blaster shots back at enemies, bounce around a room while cutting all of your opponents down, shoot people off of ledges with the Force, and engage in some flashy lightsaber duels. The game is also somewhat of a first-person shooter too, with a good assortment of blasters that can be used in the first-person view. And that's on top of a nice variety of different levels, like this one where you run along the top of this super fast train, or this one where you ride this speeder while simultaneously fighting off other enemies on speeders. Of course, this is still an early 2000s game that was developed within a year, so it's got its fair share of jank, and the voice acting often leaves a lot to be desired.
Boba Fett.
But still, the first half of this game is a pretty great little romp around the Star Wars universe as a Jedi. And then the game proceeds to fucking trip on its own shoelaces and fall off a cliff before exploding. Okay, that's just how it felt to me anyway. Turns out, the point in the game where I had stopped playing previously was also the point in the game where I felt it took a massive dip in quality. Some of the more annoying aspects of the level design in the first half of the game were suddenly pushed to the forefront, with overly obtuse puzzles and levels that constantly had me wandering around trying to figure out what I was supposed to be doing. And that's even with a Force ability that's supposed to highlight important objects. On top of that, the later levels also tend to spam you with some of the strongest enemies in the game. Like, yes, I totally want to fight 6 giant tank stormtroopers over lava, or 3 Sith with dual lightsabers in this tiny cramped room where they constantly shoot out lightning and force choke me. No, I swear, it's really fun! It gets so bad on the final level that I literally just walk past most of the enemies. There's just a severe lack of polish to everything, and the more gimmicky themed levels that I liked before are mostly dropped for ones where you just walk down a hallway and stab a dude, and then walk down another hallway and stab another dude. Again, while I think the combat is fun, it's still simple. I mean, you literally just click the mouse button a bunch of times to fight enemies, and while it's enjoyable in the beginning of the game, it just isn't engaging enough to stay entertaining throughout the entire game. That being said, I get the feeling that some of the problems I had with this game were self-imposed, especially with the combat. I don't think I was using the Force abilities the game gives you nearly enough, and with defensive options like this shield that nullifies damage, or offensive options like Force Lightning and Choke, I think some of the late-game combat encounters might not have been nearly as annoying as they had been. Maybe one day I'll go back and give the campaign another shot, but for now, I'll just pop back into the multiplayer if I ever feel like swinging a lightsaber around again. I just want to start off by saying that Animal Well is in no shape or form a bad game, and I honestly feel kind of bad putting it this far down on the list, considering how much work was put into it. But at the end of the day, what matters most when judging a game is how you feel when playing it, and while playing through Animal Well, I consistently felt underwhelmed. Like with Echoes of Wisdom, it's a game that doesn't really feel like it's for me. It's a Metroidvania, but I wasn't a fan of how the game utilized the genre. For starters, there aren't any core movement upgrades to the player character, just a few items that slightly change how you traverse the world. And while the frisbee and the bubble blower work functionally the same as a dash or a double jump, for some reason it's just an inherently less satisfying solution to me. It feels more gimmicky, and less like I'm conquering the world. Speaking of the world, I'm not a huge fan of how the map is designed in this game either. Almost every room has a little puzzle in it meant to test the player's use of a certain item, and while I know this was done on purpose, it ends up making the world feel less organic. I feel like I'm trapped within a giant sequence of puzzle boxes rather than a natural world. And within this world, there is only one collectible, a bunch of random eggs. While they certainly aren't worthless, the ambiguous nature of what they do don't end up making them very exciting to collect. And even when you do figure out that they unlock certain doors, it's hard to be excited to collect enough of them to open a door when you don't even know what kind of reward is behind it. Even though it's a small reward, picking up a missile tank in a Metroid game is far more satisfying. You instantly know what it does, and you know it'll be useful later on. Plus, it isn't the only collectible in the game. There are several more that are often even more exciting to find. Unfortunately, all of these things made it so that this only 6-hour-long game was boring to me after 4 hours of playing it, and if it had gone on any longer, I seriously might not have finished it. Which brings me to a much more negative point. I think this game costs way too much money. I don't really appreciate spending $25 on a game that is only 6 hours long, and I know I will never play again, especially when there are so many other games I've gotten so much more out of that cost less. Hollow Knight, Celeste, Enter the Gungeon, Terraria, these are all games I've spent dozens, if not hundreds of hours playing, and they all cost less than Animal Well. But obviously, whether you think something is overpriced or not is entirely subjective to how much you personally get out of it. Of course, you can't know how much enjoyment you'll get out of a game until you actually buy it, and in my case, I was left pretty disappointed with my purchase of Animal Well. I'm not going to be a complete negative Nelly about it though, as there are several things about this game that I like. It is undoubtedly one of the best looking pixel art games I've ever played. The plants and foliage sway as you pass by them, sometimes little creatures scurry amongst the background, while giant animals dominate the screen, and all the scenery and lighting is just so vibrant and beautiful. It's clear just how much love and attention was put into this game's art style. There's also a few sequences in this game that I really liked, particularly this one at the end of the game where you get chased around by this big weird monster thing. It came out of nowhere and was a really cool little moment. Again, I don't think this is a bad game by any means, just one that I sadly didn't end up connecting with. In last year's video, I talked about how Wind Waker was the last of the 3D Zeldas I was finally able to play. So this year, I instead bring to you the last of the 3D Mario games that I was finally able to play. And let me tell you, I certainly did not save the best for last. One of my favorite things about the 3D Mario games is how different most of them are from each other, as it's what keeps the series fresh and unique. 3D Land, on the other hand, is essentially just a 2D Mario game, but in 3D, and it is, unsurprisingly, underwhelming. It's not a bad game, but I wouldn't call these games bad either. They're just very unremarkable. Which I think is the perfect word to describe 3D Land with, unremarkable. It's a well-made game that I enjoyed playing, but it didn't do anything I haven't already seen before. And it doesn't help that 3D World pretty much did the same thing this game did, but better. Not only is it far more creative, it's also a much more natural convergence between the 2D and 3D games, whereas 3D Land almost feels like a straight conversion from 2D to 3D. Of course, you could argue that 3D World works so well because of what 3D Land started, and that might be true, but to me, the whole game feels pretty routine, released during a time where the series was just going through the motions. It's like Doom, but 3D and better. Cave Story is a pretty neat little game. I mean, it practically birthed the indie genre, and after playing through it myself, I can see why people like it so much. But for whatever reason, it didn't leave a very lasting impression on me. Like, I enjoyed the game while I was playing it, well, other than this part. But once I finished it, I just kind of forgot about it. For example, even after playing through the game twice to get the good ending, I don't remember what the story was about at all. I know the game takes place on a floating island, but I don't remember why the island is floating, or why all the characters in the game are on it, or why there's a dragon, or why this guy kinda looks like Sans Undertale. And while I can remember a lot of the different characters' personalities, outside of Curly, I don't remember what any of their names were. The whole game is kinda like this in my mind. Obviously I didn't forget everything, but a lot of the details are missing. And while I wouldn't call Cave Story a forgettable game, I think it just didn't do many things I haven't already seen before. It still does those things very well though, which I honestly think might be part of the reason why I forgot about it. A game like Jedi Academy is memorable to me because of its flaws, whereas Cave Story doesn't have many at all. But Cave Story also doesn't do anything memorably great either, and as such, I can only put it up so far on my list.
Yeah.
Luigi's Mansion is a simple game. You walk around a haunted mansion, suck up ghosts, solve some puzzles, and break a bunch of shit looking for money. And that's what I like about it so much. Out of all the games I played this year, Luigi's Mansion is the most content to just be what it is. It's not some massive grand adventure with dozens of hours of content, it's just a short, unique little experience made to be fun. And the game is able to accomplish this right away with how extremely charming it is. The art style has got this early 2000s cartoon horror aesthetic that I really like, what with the super angular architecture, the big cliché wooden mansion, and a surprisingly effective atmosphere, bolstered by an absolutely iconic soundtrack. I wouldn't say Luigi's Mansion is an actually scary game, but its atmosphere captures a certain vibe that I really enjoyed. Luigi in particular is very entertaining to me. I just love how he constantly looks like he's about to piss himself, and his overly exaggerated animations are super fun to watch. But it's not all in the presentation, the gameplay is pretty great too. Like I said before, it's simple, but the game explores every idea it can with it, resulting in a ton of unique bosses and puzzles. The observatory room is probably my favorite example of this. At first it looks like a normal room, but after looking through a telescope it transforms into this crazy space room full of stars, and then you can catch one of the stars and shoot it at the moon to unlock a secret. It was an awesome little moment, and the entire game is full of this kind of creativity. That isn't to say every puzzle did it for me though, as there were a couple with solutions that I felt were a bit too obscure, specifically these moments where you have to look at a hole in the wall or something similar to get transported to the next area. They're just kinda odd moments that didn't feel very intuitive. And if I were to complain about any other part of the game, it would have to be these boos that you can find in every room. While they aren't so bad to deal with at first, they get increasingly more and more annoying the further you get into the game, as their massive amount of health and tendency to run off into other rooms makes them a bit of a nightmare to fight. But other than that, wait no, there's also this room. This room is stupid and annoying and dumb, and I hate it. But other than that, I enjoyed the game a lot, and I could definitely see myself playing it again in the future. In Outlast, you play as John Reporter looking to make his biggest scoop yet, so you drive out to this remote insane asylum owned by the most evil sounding company ever, crawl in through a window, look around a bit, and then... Outlast is a fucked up game, and in it you are gonna see some fucked up shit. Still isn't as scary as Luigi's Mansion though. The atmosphere in this game is just absolutely oppressive. Every corner you turn, there's either a pile of guts on the floor or a crazy dude waiting to rip your face off, and most of your time in this game is spent wandering around in the dark. Even when nothing is happening, there's a constant feeling of dread hanging over you, because for whatever reason, John Reporter decided to bring the shittiest camera he could find with him. Like this thing runs out of charge faster than an undocked Switch. It is ridiculous. And you need this camera, because it is the only way to see in the dark, turning this game into the most accurate simulation of trying to find batteries I've ever seen. But what really sucks is just how completely defenseless you are. For as much smack as John Reporter talks in his notes, he's kind of a little bitch, because he can't fight back at all. Like, I think the best he ever manages is a little push one time. So the only thing you can do to survive is to run and hide, making the player feel even more powerless in an already bleak scenario. But despite all that, you are like the most durable human ever. You get thrown out of a window twice, you get your fingers chopped off, you fall like 50 feet and then just get up afterwards, you're tossed around a room like a doll, and you even survive getting shot.
You have become the host.
Oh wait, no, yeah, no, you don't survive that one actually, whoops. Another thing I also think is worth mentioning about this game is its length, which is around 5 hours. That's pretty short, but that's actually something about the game I like. It doesn't unnecessarily drag itself on for any longer than it has to. It's also kind of the perfect length too, because Outlast doesn't really have the most varied gameplay. Most of the time you're just running away from something, hiding from something, or doing both while searching for a few buttons or wheels to interact with. That's about all you do in this game, and I could see it becoming pretty boring if the game went on for any longer than it does. It also helps that Outlast has a pretty nice variety of set pieces and locations to help keep the game from becoming stale. There's the offices at the beginning of the game, the sewers, a rainy outdoor area, the older wooden part of the asylum, and the secret labs underneath, an area which I especially like due to its juxtaposition to the rest of the game. It made for a really climactic finale, though it's definitely more sci-fi thriller than survival horror at that point. That being said though, Outlast isn't a completely flawless game. Specifically, its AI can be a little silly at times, to the point where it would become pretty immersion-breaking. Outlast also has that fairly unavoidable issue with horror games where once you die to a certain section enough times, it loses almost all of its scariness and just becomes tedious. But when this game does do its horror right, it is very effective, and the soundtrack plays no small part in that as well. Sometimes it's hauntingly beautiful. And other times, it's this horrible, screeching, nightmare shit. Jesus Christ. Sometimes, you'll just be walking along, minding your own business, and then... oh no. When you hear this song, that's when you know Bob is near. And you do not want to mess around with Bob, alright? He will fuck you up. So you've just got to move along, real slowly, and... Only a select few games are so legendary and iconic as to define an entire genre. Super Mario Bros., Doom, Resident Evil, none of these games were the first of their kind, but they were the ones that left the biggest impact on their respective genres. And Metal Gear Solid is the exact same way. Along with Thief, this game brought the stealth genre into the mainstream, and its influence can still be felt to this day. So clearly, this game must have done something right. The stealth isn't that good. Of course, when Metal Gear Solid first came out, there wasn't anything else like it, and trying to stay hidden from your enemies rather than fighting them was a super novel idea. But it's been over 20 years since then, and I feel like the gameplay hasn't aged all that well. I can't quite put my finger on it, but Snake is just kinda clunky to control, and I think that's partly because you can only move in 8 directions, and because there's no way to properly aim your weapons. There's an aim button, but you don't actually see what you're aiming at. You're just pointing your gun in a general direction and hoping it works out. It doesn't help that you can't move and shoot at the same time either, which isn't the worst thing ever, but it becomes a definite pain in the ass during this long stair sequence and during some boss fights. As for the stealth, I didn't really find it all that engaging. Most of the time, you're just squinting up at the little mini-map to see where all the enemies are, and the simplicity of Snake's moveset, plus the linear level design, means that there isn't a whole lot of variety in how you approach every encounter. Instead, the gameplay variety comes mostly from the different set pieces and bosses the game likes to throw at you, like the helicopter fight against Liquid, or the duel with Sniper Wolf, or the part where you sit in a room waiting for a key to get cold. Yeah, not all of these parts are exactly winners either. So, what makes this game so special then?
Finally, just the two of us. How are you feeling?
Not bad. Caught a nice nap on this revolving bed of yours. Too bad I was sleeping alone.
I'm glad to hear that. This is some bed, all right. I'm about to show you some of its nicer features.
Where are my things?
The other thing this game pioneered. Long cinematic cutscenes with complete voice acting. Good voice acting, which was super rare for games of this time. While it's definitely still a little campy at times, the voice acting in Metal Gear Solid does so much to make all of its characters feel believable, and each interaction you have with them only reinforces that authenticity. Before, when I was talking about Cave Story, I mentioned how I didn't remember most of the characters' names in that game, and it is the complete opposite with Metal Gear Solid. There are so many memorable characters in this game. Colonel Campbell, Mei Ling, Naomi, Meryl, Otacon, Master Miller, Ocelot, Liquid. I can clearly remember all of these characters and their personalities, even over a year after playing the game. And if you're wondering why I didn't include Snake in that list, well, I didn't feel the need to state what is already obvious. His voice is so legendary that you literally can't forget him.
This is Snake. Do you read me, Otacon?
Loud and clear, Snake.
Kept you waiting, huh?
But it's not just the voice acting that makes these characters work. They're also written extremely well. There's so much depth and nuance to each and every one of them, to the point where they feel like they're real people. And while the plot is definitely good on its own, it's the characters that bring the whole thing together.
A sad story. We shouldn't have turned our backs on the Kurds after the Gulf War.
Listen, we're not responsible for her choices. Everyone decides their own fate, no matter where they were born. Words like fate, karma, it's just an excuse for giving up, if you ask me.
I don't agree with you. Maybe if she hadn't been born on a battlefield, she might have had a happier, more fulfilling life. She might not have turned into a killer.
But if I had to pick a favorite, it'd have to be Liquid. He's such an entertaining villain, and he has some of the most hilariously iconic moments in not just this game, but in all of gaming.
So, the snake's finally come out of his home. Are you ready now, my brother?
Liquid!
Snake! Did you like my sunglasses? Yes, twins. But we're not ordinary twins. We're twins linked by cursed genes. Les enfants terribles. You're fine. You got all the old man's dominant genes. I got the flawed recessive genes. Nice shot! Better hurry. It's going too low! Snake!
The story is also why I don't really mind the gameplay being a bit lackluster, because you literally spend more time listening to people talk and watching cutscenes than you do actually playing the game. Which brings up the argument of, well, why not just make it a movie then? But I think there's a big difference between watching a movie and playing one. Even if there isn't a lot of gameplay, it still immerses you more into the world, because you're the one interacting with other characters, and you're the one influencing events in the story. Plus, Metal Gear Solid has a few really cool moments that are only possible because it's a video game. Like how you have to look at the back of the game box to get Meryl's codec frequency, or the famous Psycho Mantis scene where he reads your mind and makes your controller move on its own. Not to mention the torture sequence, which I'm kind of conflicted on, because on one hand, it totally fucking sucks, but on the other, it is an extremely effective way of simulating torture. Like, it legitimately hurts to mash the button as fast as you need to not die. These moments are gimmicky for sure, but they're still really neat, as they take advantage of what makes video games unique, giving the player an experience that no other form of art or media could. And that's what makes this game so special. Plus it has liquid in it.
Not yet, Snake! It's not over yet!
I'll be honest, trying to figure out where to place Metal Gear Solid 2 on this list was a real challenge, and even after settling on a placement, I still feel like I'm undermining the game a bit by placing it at number 6, and that's mostly because my opinions on this game have only gotten more favorable over time, especially in regards to the story. When I first beat Sons of Liberty, the story totally flew over my head. I generally liked it, but I didn't really get it, and I came out of the whole thing thinking that it was far too convoluted. I mean, to be fair, the amount of plot twists in this game is actually insane. At the time, it was super overwhelming to me, but looking back on it now, I realized that that was the entire point. Sons of Liberty's plot is intentionally overwhelming, and not for no reason, as it's all in service of reinforcing this game's message on misinformation. And the game does this by directly misinforming the player themselves. Throughout the game, you are constantly being fed misinformation and lies, in both direct and indirect ways. A character like the Colonel is obviously lying to you so that he can manipulate you for his own ends, but other characters like Olga, Ames, the President, they're all telling you what they think is the truth, but almost none of it actually is. Everyone is so caught up in this web of deceit that even the people trying to tell you the truth just end up propagating the misinformation even further. So you're forced to sift through this constant stream of lies to try and find the truth buried underneath. And when you think you finally found it, it all turns out to be yet another fanciful lie. It's constant and maddening, to the point where you don't even know what to believe anymore. Even the game itself is misleading. The cover art, the demo, the first chapter of the game, all of this was done to trick people into thinking that Snake would be the protagonist. But he isn't. Raiden is the protagonist. And this naturally pissed a lot of people off. Because, yeah, being lied to sucks, and Metal Gear Solid 2 intends to make you feel the full ramifications of that. And I really like that, because the game isn't just content to tell you its message, it wants you to fully feel it, and that is a true display of artistic expression. That's what makes art so special in the first place, its ability to connect with you on an emotional level. But the game isn't just trying to be artsy, its messages on misinformation serve as a genuine warning. Whether you like it or not, we live in an age of misinformation, and Sons of Liberty entirely predicted this all the way back in 2001. Fake news, echo chambers, post-truth politics, these are all problems that we are currently dealing with, and with the advent of generative AI, it is now more important than ever to distinguish fact from fiction. But ultimately, only we can decide what to believe in, and where to put our faith. Find the meaning behind the words, then decide, because only we can decide our own futures. And that's the true meaning of Metal Gear Solid 2. It's a brilliantly poignant message. However, the story and its themes don't exist within a vacuum. As a matter of fact, they're connected to an entire game, and that game is far from perfect. Don't get me wrong, Sons of Liberty has its moments, like this insane boss fight where you're running around after this crazy fat guy who's rolling around on skates planting bombs around the arena that you have to disarm, but generally, the gameplay left a lot to be desired for me. Specifically, I didn't really gel with how often this game repeats set pieces from the first game. Now before you freak out at me, yes, I know that Metal Gear Solid 2 does that on purpose, it's part of the plot, but that doesn't mean I have to like it. I think it's a conceptually cool idea, and its purpose in the story is neat, but when I was actually playing the game, I couldn't help but feel underwhelmed. Sons of Liberty carries over so many moments from the first game that I hardly ever felt like I was doing anything new. I was just experiencing the same set pieces over again, but with better looking graphics and different characters. Instead of sniping at a female assassin, you get to snipe at a vampire assassin. Instead of fighting this son of Big Boss while he's in a helicopter, you get to fight this other son of Big Boss while he's in a jet. Instead of fighting one Metal Gear, you get to fight like fucking 12 Metal Gears. These sections are still enjoyable, but they aren't quite as exciting when I've already done them before. And really, I feel like the game does enough to emphasize that it's repeating moments from the first game with its cutscenes anyway, so these repeated gameplay segments definitely could have been switched out for more original ones. I will say though, the general gameplay in Metal Gear Solid 2 is a definite improvement over its predecessor. The weapons are a lot smoother to use, the enemies are more intelligent, and there's a large amount of interactivity in the level design. Oh, and it's got this part too.
Nobody's looking, right?
Overall, it's a lot less clunky feeling than the first game, but it still isn't without its janky moments, which, along with my previous complaints, are the main reasons why I felt I couldn't place this game any higher on the list. I love the story, but the gameplay didn't fully do it for me. That being said though, I've only played through Sons of Liberty once, and given more experience with it, I could definitely see myself enjoying it even more in the future. Alright, real talk, this video is already way too long and I still have 4 more games to talk about. So for this game, I'm going to switch things up a bit and do a rapid fire pros versus cons rundown of what I think. Let's start with the pros. The visuals. This game is gorgeous, straight up. They did a great job with this remake. The story. While Thousand Year Door's story might not have as much depth or subtext as a game like Metal Gear, it's still really enjoyable and fun, with even a few moments that were far more genuine and mature than I expected. The characters. This game's cast is easily one of the best parts about it. Not only are they all well written, it is amazingly diverse, with tons of different personalities and cultures. There's a sassy Goomba, a shy Koopa, a seductive mouse, this computer that learns how to love, a sleazy manager, Rockhawk, an old bob-omb sailor, this bitch, Eggman, a family of Italian Pianta mobsters, Russian bob-ombs, and so much more. Plus, there's also this character, which all I'm saying is the variety. No 2 chapters in this game are alike, and it's awesome. Things start out kind of basic at first, with a more traditional quest towards a castle, but from there, things only get more and more eccentric. There's this tree full of puzzles, you get enrolled into a wrestling federation, become stranded on a deserted island, have your body snatched in a haunted mansion, solve a train mystery, and even go to the moon. The gameplay. I feel like turn-based combat can be pretty tricky to get right, but this game totally nails it, with timing elements that require more focus and fights that force you to think strategically. The level design is great as well, with a lot of emphasis put on exploration and puzzle solving. Okay, now for the cons. The final boss. This game's final boss sucks. Bite me. And yeah, there aren't any more cons, just go play the game. This game, right here, is good.
Do you have a single fact to back that up?
Right off the bat, Deus Ex lays all of its cards on the table. You're dropped into a large open level, are told to go stop some terrorists, and then the game just lets you go. It is completely up to you how to accomplish this mission. You can sneak past all of the enemies, or you can do non-lethal takedowns, or you can do very lethal takedowns. To get into the Statue of Liberty, you could get a key to the front door from an informant on the other side of the island, but you could also just pick the lock to this door too. Or maybe you don't even want to go through the front door, in which case you can use some crates behind the building to climb onto the roof instead. There are optional objectives to complete that can earn you extra money, and if you choose to explore, there are dozens of secrets to uncover. You can listen in on enemy conversations, talk to NPCs, and read newspapers to learn more about the world. But if you just want to shoot stuff, then yeah, you can do that too. There is so much freedom in how you can play through this one level alone. But it's literally just the first mission, and it serves as a way to teach the player what to expect from the rest of the game. There is no one solution to beating any level in Deus Ex, and I absolutely love that because it adds so much variety to the game. One of my favorite examples of this is when you're in Hong Kong, and you're tasked with investigating a woman named Maggie Chow. She's up in this big penthouse, and on my first playthrough, I just took the elevator straight up to her room. But after talking to her, a bunch of guards popped out of a hidden room and ambushed me. So on my second playthrough, I explored around a little bit more and was able to find a secret path leading to the top of the apartment, which allowed me to enter the hidden room first and take out all of the guards before they could ambush me. It was an awesome moment, and there are countless instances of this kind of open-ended level design throughout the game. It really encourages player ingenuity and choice, and that's not even mentioning how you can level up certain stats and augmentations, which essentially lets you create your own playstyle. You could focus more on stealth mechanics like lockpicking, hacking, and cloaking to tactically make your way through the game, or you could just turn yourself into a tank and kill everybody like a complete psycho. But Deus Ex isn't all just action, there's also a massive emphasis placed on its world. The atmosphere in this game is top-notch, and the music fully immerses you into each location. It's also really impressive how detailed this game is too. Like, if you shoot a tranquilizer dart at an enemy, it'll take a few seconds for them to pass out. Closed up shops can be broken into and robbed. You can hack into people's computers and read their emails. The pool tables can be interacted with, and when you get closer to surfaces, they actually become more detailed. A lot of the NPCs are also really great in this regard too. And unlike most RPGs, talking to all of them doesn't feel like a complete waste of time, as you can often learn useful information from them, or otherwise just learn interesting things about the world. Coupled with Deus Ex's heavy use of conspiracy theories in its story, this is also where the game gets a lot of its notoriety from, with a few lines of dialogue in particular that have since become depressingly prophetic.
Corporations are so big you don't even know who you're working for. That's terror. Terror built into the system.
The West's so afraid of strong government that has no government, only financial power.
Our governments have limited power by design.
Rhetoric? You believe it?
Some people just don't understand the dangers of indiscriminate surveillance.
Fortunately though, Deus Ex is able to balance out its more serious themes with one of the most unintentionally funny protagonists I have ever seen, JC Denton. Every single thing he says is delivered in the most deadpan way possible, and it is glorious to behold.
My new partner, JC Denton. Don't tell me you're going to wear those sunglasses during a night operation.
My vision is augmented.
I'm starving. Do you have anything to eat?
You don't look that bad. Tell me what you know about the NSF.
What you want?
You've got 10 seconds to beat it before I add you to the list of NSF casualties.
Easy, bro. Just having us a conversation.
5 seconds.
Girl's got a head full of marbles. I have to yell. Or she don't hear me.
3.
She skitzes on me. It's my ass, man.
1.
What the hell were you thinking, JC?
Agent Navarro was out of line. I had no choice.
They'll have you killed. They won't even blink an eye.
Neither did I.
Oh my God, Daddy!
What a shame.
He can't really be. There must be something we can do.
He was a good man. What a rotten way to die. How are the drinks here?
Great if you like red piece.
Never tried it.
A criminal! Give me the 300 credits or I'll call the police.
Make me.
Oh my God, JC, a bomb!
A bomb. I have to drop something. Hold on.
To touch on some aspects of this game that I don't like so much though, I think the lack of any kind of checkpoints or autosaves is a bit of a bummer, as it forces you to rely on save states to make it through the game, which can pretty obviously break a lot of the difficulty. And while this isn't a problem with the game itself, it is infuriating how little effort was put into re-releasing this game. Being forced to download an entirely different launcher just so that I can see more than 2 feet in front of my face or not have the game lag out because I'm looking at water is fucking lame. And it's honestly shameful that this is the state the game is in if you try to play it straight off of Steam. So all I'm saying is fix your damn game, Eidos Interactive, because it's really, really good. Thank you. Goodbye. My experience with Donkey Kong Country Returns goes as follows. I picked up the Wii version of the game, played through it, was like, yeah, that was alright when I finished it, and then proceeded to play through the game 3 more times. When I say that this game is good, I don't mean it's just good, alright? I mean that it is good. Every level is just this explosion of creativity and fun, like it seriously never stops. You are constantly being exposed to new ideas and mechanics, all while mechanics from previous levels are continuously expanded upon and integrated into one another. There's also an amazing amount of detail in this game, and where most other platformers are just content to have floating platforms and obstacles, Donkey Kong Country Returns goes the extra mile and ensures that nearly everything makes sense. Platforms are held up by posts, ruins, or trees, and not only that, you can even see the little angles that support the bottom of them. This green foliage is grown around a water wheel, which is kept operational by the water you can see flowing through the area. And in World 6, these moving platforms are actually bones cascading down through tar. It all feels natural, like everything is built into the world itself, and I really, really like that, because it carries on that atmospheric tone from the first game that I love so much. This game also carries over a lot of the difficulty from the first 2 games as well, which I especially enjoyed. But if I had to fault Returns for one thing, it'd definitely be its reuse of the first game's soundtrack. I wouldn't mind if they reused a couple of songs here and there, but a pretty big chunk of Return's soundtrack is just remixes of songs from the first game, and it's one of the few parts of the game that feels a bit unoriginal. But if you're gonna copy any game's soundtrack, Donkey Kong Country's is a pretty great choice, and the remixes they did for Return's OST are still extremely enjoyable. It's not like this game doesn't have any new music though, and a lot of it is really great. And this is super minor, but I really like how this game handles its alternate paths. One of the things that annoys me the most about Tropical Freeze is how you have to find a secret exit in order to unlock these alternative paths, as it often results in you replaying through large portions of these giant levels, which can get really tedious. But in Returns, all you have to do is buy a key from Cranky, and boom, the alternate path is unlocked. It is so much more streamlined. And you can skip this game's opening cutscene, which, like, what the fuck is up with you, Tropical Freeze? Oh yeah, and the bosses are better. And the entire game is better. Bite me. Which begs the question, why did I think the game was only just good when I first played it? This thing. Before I played Returns, I thought people were just exaggerating when they said that the motion controls sucked in this game. But no, they are genuinely awful. Not only does it suck to have to constantly waggle the Wii Remote around, there's such a massive delay between when you shake the controller and when Donkey Kong actually moves, making the platforming way more sluggish and difficult than it should be. Platforming that's already pretty difficult even without the motion controls. They 100% make the game worse, and they're the main reason why I didn't fully click with this game on my first playthrough. The motion controls actually made me wonder how much better the game would be without them, and don't tell anybody this, but I was able to find a way to play this game with a Switch Pro controller instead. And oh my god, it makes a world of difference. Being able to roll at the push of a button makes the movement so much more exciting and fluid. You can start doing all these satisfying little tricks to get between platforms. And if you really know what you're doing, you can just completely tear through this game. Seriously, if you're interested in playing DKC Returns, find a way to do it with an actual controller. Just as long as it's not this piece of shit re-release. Like, this is an actual scam. Fuck you, Nintendo. Out of the 3 Metal Gear games I played this year, Snake Eater is the only one among them that isn't primarily carried by its story. To put it simply,
the game is fun.
Where the stealth in Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2 pretty much just amounts to hiding around a corner or walking around an enemy's view, the stealth in Metal Gear Solid 3 actually feels like stealth. You have to crawl through foliage to avoid being seen, wear different face paints and camouflage to blend in, the stealth takedowns are actually consistent, and your silenced pistol and tranquilizer are legitimately your best friends. My last playthrough of this game was done on the extreme difficulty, and man, some of the encounters in this game are brutal. The enemies are so aware of everything that's going on around them, and just one little slip-up can completely blow your cover. But it actually forces you to be stealthy and to find creative ways to overcome challenges. Here, I waited for this guard below me to turn around, then I jumped over the railing, dropped down, grabbed the other railing, snuck up behind the guard, and silently took him out. Awesome. The high difficulty also means you have to react quickly when things go wrong, which could involve taking out multiple guards at once when they notice you, or throwing a well-timed grenade towards enemy reinforcements. And the level design in this game is especially good, with these pretty open areas that can be tackled in multiple different ways. And just like with Deus Ex, there's never one single solution to a problem. When you're tasked with stealing the outfit of a high-ranking officer so that you can impersonate him, you could just take him out while no one is looking, or you could wait until he goes to the bathroom, or you could give him poisonous food and watch him pass out. Awesome. To get back to the Shagohod, you could sneak your way back through Groznygrad, or get in a truck, hide in a box, and have some guy just deliver you there. To me, this is where Metal Gear Solid 3 far surpasses the first 2 games, and where I've only played those games once, I've played Snake Eater 3 times now. On one playthrough, I even skipped through most of the dialogue and cutscenes just to play the game. Not to say that this game's story isn't great either. First of all, I love this game's setting. Being placed in the middle of the Cold War, it gives the story such an important feel to it, like you're actively experiencing a part of history, and the amount of detail that goes into the background of what you're doing makes it all feel so grounded and believable. And that's even with a main villain who has lightning powers. Snake Eater is also pretty clearly inspired by James Bond, with a title sequence that is very much paying homage to those films, but is absolutely legendary in its own right.
What a thrill, with darkness and silence through the night. What a thrill, I'm searching and I'll melt into you.
I've listened to this song many, many times. It is seriously phenomenal.
But you're so supreme. I give my life, not for honor, but for you. In my time, there'll be no one else. Crime, it's the way I
Just like with the other Metal Gear games, the characters are top-notch. I particularly like all the little interactions Snake has with Paramedic. The way they bounce off of each other is so enjoyable and well written.
It wouldn't be referring to you coming from outer space, would it?
How rude! Why do you say that?
Because no one on Earth could be as charming as you.
But no one compares to the objectively best character in this game, Ocelot. He is so ridiculously over the top, and I love it. I mean, just look at this scene.
Ocelots are proud creatures. They prefer to hunt alone. Shots.
He is just completely obsessed with Snake, and it is so funny to watch him continuously try to one-up him and consistently fail.
Son of a bitch!
But at the very end of the game, he finally catches up to Snake, just to reveal that he only wanted to shoot him with a blank.
It's a blank! Oh, that was fun. Till we meet again, John.
And then it turns out that he was the only one who actually knew what was going on the whole time.
Mr. Director.
Of course, I still really appreciate the serious stuff this game's story has to offer too, and while it might not be as deep or artsy as Metal Gear Solid 2's story, it's still got a lot of extremely profound moments. Snake Eater's commentary on the Cold War, the space race, and international politics are brilliant, but it's only in the boss where the game is able to deliver its most powerful message. She fully represents what it means to be a soldier. She gives up everything for her country, and her legacy acts as a tribute to all of those who have sacrificed their lives for what they believe in. There are countless stories that will never be remembered, countless lives that never got the chance to grow old, and the boss serves as a painful reminder of all that we've lost. The ending of this game is absolutely beautiful, and for as long as I live, I will never forget the memory of a true patriot. One of the most heralded aspects of any video game is that of immersion. Of course, immersion is an important part of many types of media. It's what strengthens the connection between the individual and the art, but with video games in particular, I feel it is especially potent. You aren't just watching or reading events, you are actively experiencing them, controlling the main character, and it makes the overall experience that much more engaging. Challenges are more exciting to overcome, horror is more terrifying, and exploration more tantalizing. Immersion isn't necessary for a video game, but it's an aspect of them that I extremely value. And I am not exaggerating when I say that Half-Life Alyx is the most immersive game I have ever played. For the amount of detail that I praise Deus Ex and Snake Eater for having, Half-Life Alyx genuinely has 10 times more. Nearly everything in this game can be interacted with, and it is incredible. Liquid sloshes around bottles as you shake them. Paintings can be swung around on their hinges. Every cabinet and drawer can be opened. Corpses have movable jaws. This piano is actually playable. You can wear a cone as a hat, drop a grenade in a toilet and then watch it explode, or open a dumpster, crawl inside, close the lid, and then just chill out in it. Why? Because why not? But what really makes Half-Life Alyx so immersive is the VR, as it directly puts you into Alyx's shoes in the most physical way possible. You don't just press a button to open a door, you have to grab the handle and pull it open. Bullets have to be placed into your gun and loaded. Ladders can be climbed one rung at a time. Looking for ammo or resin requires you to peek into little hiding spots or dig around in drawers. Head crabs have to be pulled from your body. And the combat in this game is so exhilarating. I mean, I couldn't tell you how many times I would be actually down on the floor ducking for cover. It is so visceral and real. Watching a grenade land next to you is horrifying, and you'll constantly fumble your ammo as you try to reload. Some of the soldiers are these big, hulking brutes, and it is scary when they start coming at you. But when you take one down, it is all the more satisfying. The scenery in this game is curated to perfection. There's all the details in the environment like I mentioned before, but there's also a palpable sense of atmosphere in every area you visit. This old apartment building is in a state of disrepair and decay. The rooms are cramped, and everything looks like it's covered in a fine layer of dust. The alien fauna is all the more strange to observe and interact with up close. And the vistas are just absolutely stunning. But nothing even comes close to the end of the game. It is a mesmerizing, mind-blowing experience. And I don't care if this sounds lame, but this part of the game was genuinely one of the most amazing things I've ever seen in my life. Half-Life Alyx is such an innovative and unique game, but it's not all just a bunch of technical gimmicky stuff made to impress you. It's a fun game to play, and there's a lot of variety in what you do. There's the combat, exploration, puzzle solving, plus a few horror moments, and I think they're all done great. I especially like the integration of the gravity gloves. They're very intuitive and satisfying to use. In terms of criticism, I haven't got much. I think some of the writing hasn't aged terribly well due to some of its Marvel-like qualities, and like with Outer Wilds, I don't think Half-Life Alyx is a very replayable game. I'd like to play it again, but just setting it up is such a process, and VR in general tends to give me a headache. But I think that proves just how great this game is, that even while often feeling uncomfortable while playing it, I was still able to enjoy the game so much. It is a shining example of what VR games are capable of, and it is undoubtedly one of the best games I have ever played. Yes, it's done. The Game of the Year video is finally finished. No, I don't think so. Now, nobody will know that your game was my true Game of the Year. I liked Half-Life Alyx, of course, but oh yes, they'll surely eat it up. I even included Mr. Balls on my list. Yes, that really was the worst game I played this year. What about Shadow of the Erdtree? It doesn't count, it's just a DLC. The next video, well, I guess we'll just have to see. Yes, it was nice catching up with you. I look forward to playing your game again, John Monster Prom.